I wanted to walk with you through the garden today and show you a couple of the things that I worked on this morning. First, I repotted some of my fruit trees. Before, it had about this much of a gap between the tree and the top of the pot, and I wanted to utilize all of the pot because this is a standard size tree. Hello, little guy. Oh my goodness, you guys, look at that beautiful color. Before having a garden, I never knew hummingbirds came in that many colors. So back to the trees. The reason I wanted to repot them now is because they're about to start blooming, even though we haven't had our last frost yet, and even though winter really only lasted for like 3 weeks here where I live, the trees are starting to break dormancy, as you can see here, and I'm pretty sure that a couple of them are gonna fruit this year, if not most of them. But this is my Anna apple. It was planted too low to begin with, and after what I experienced with the citrus trees, I really wanted to go in there and make sure that the tree wasn't being suffocated. So I spent a few hours mixing up soil and then transplanting it, and I can't wait for it to start blooming. It honestly was very difficult because these trees weigh a ton. I would say minimum 100 pounds. And the worst part is that I forgot to turn off the irrigation last night, and today was one of the days when they were gonna get watered, which means that the trees were extra heavy this morning because the pots are full of water. Next is my Florida Prince peach. This is one of the ones that was buried the lowest. The good thing is that I had it at the correct level. Even though I wasn't utilizing all of the pot, it wasn't buried too deep, so you could still see the root flare even from here. And even though this one hasn't woken up quite as much as my apple tree, I do see a lot of bud swelling, which is a really good sign. So I wanted to make sure I got it transplanted before it fully woke up. That way it doesn't go through so much shock. This is my Santa Rosa plum, which looks stunning as ever. And this one also has some buds that are starting to swell. So I definitely wanted to make sure to give it the appropriate amount of space. And all of these trees were planted as bare roots, and they had enormous root systems already, which is a really good sign, and I think they'll make good use of the extra soil that I added at the bottom. The last tree I repotted was my Parfianga pomegranate. This one actually really needed it. As you can see now, the soil is a little bit mounded. I do need to go in and fix irrigation because I'm not using those stakes anymore. I'm doing the circle running around the pot. This one actually had some girdling roots because I had planted it far too deep. It wasn't as deep as I planted my citrus trees, but about this much too deep. So now you can actually see the root flare right there. It just has a bit of mulch on top. I should probably pull back a bit more. But here you go. You could see the root flare right here. And I had to cut off about 3 girdling roots. They weren't getting too bad, but they were on their way. So I wanted to make sure to fix that. And I also went ahead and pruned it off a bit more to give it a better shape. That way I can start trellising up these arches and it'll have a nicer overall look. I felt comfortable repotting all of my deciduous fruit trees right now because for the most part, they're dormant. Some of them are starting to wake up, but if I had done it next year, the soil level would have gone down even more. And I'm expecting a lot of them to fruit this season, so I want to make sure that they have adequate amount of space. Also, I'm pretty sure that next year their root systems are going to be even heavier, and by that point I'll need help to repot them. But for now I was able to do it on my own, which is what I enjoy doing, so I'm happy that I got it done today. And hopefully these trees will continue to take off in the next few weeks and we'll see them bloom beautifully. I recently talked to you guys about the biggest mistake I ever made, which was how we potted up our first 2 citrus trees over a year ago when we first started the garden, and they were doing fine up until about a day or 2 ago when my lime tree started drooping significantly. And honestly, I kept checking on it about every hour to hour and a half because I was so worried about it. It had been pretty cold and windy, so I was scared it was going to topple over. So I figured maybe that was why it was just the temperature. But then I realized that it wasn't really perking up anymore. And then I saw a video from Edge of Nowhere Farm where Dwayne had transplanted an older lemon tree, and the roots I removed from my trees was nowhere compared to how much they removed from that tree. And in an update, they showed that the tree was actually starting to bloom a few months later, I believe. So that gave me a little bit of hope. But I took a really huge tip from him, which was the fact that because he pruned some of the roots, they also went ahead and did that to the foliage of the tree. And I think that's why mine were looking the way they were. Let me go ahead and show you. So here's my bear's lime tree, and there are some of the branches. And right now it's looking so much better. The moment I pruned it, it immediately started perking up, but most of the leaves were looking like this, if not worse. I understand that it's been really cold. I think though that it just started going through a lot of shock, not only with some of its roots being heavily disturbed, on top of that the colder climate, and every factor combined was just too much for this little tree. So I went ahead, I pruned it back. Immediately a day later it started perking up. Immediately, you guys. I mean, every single leaf on this tree was drooped over. And now I see a few of them that look a bit funky, but for the most part, it looks great again. And look at that, it's pushing out. Ooh, I've been playing in the garden, as you can see, but it's pushing out more growth. And if you look at all of these branches, there's new growth everywhere. Look at that. I feel like it's gonna try and flower again soon. I did the same to my clementine tree, and this one looks so much better. I look closer and it's finally starting to put on more growth. For the longest time, it was stagnant. It was barely growing. It had that one huge piece that you saw at the top, and then the rest of the tree looked pretty bald. And now it's finally looking a lot happier, which makes me a lot happier as well. So I just wanted to update you guys on that because it honestly had been on my mind, and I want to bring you guys along the process of these trees recovering. I have really high hopes for them. Ideally, I wouldn't have done what I did up until spring, but I know that they would have started flowering by then, and I think flowering on top of having their roots disturbed, on top of being repotted, would have been way too much for them, and I didn't want to sacrifice the fruit. I'm not sure if they'll keep their fruit this year. They still might, because they have about 99% of their roots left, and I'm glad that they're looking great so far. I'm not going to say they're completely in the clear because anything can happen. They went from looking fine one day to looking really bad the following day, and now they're perked up again. So I hope that this continues. It's bound to get warmer, and as spring rolls in, I feel like these trees are really going to take off. They're finally going to be able to breathe. They're finally going to be able to thrive, and I'm so happy. I feel so much relief, but I'm still going to keep an eye on them. The other things I did this morning, aside from bringing my seedlings back out here, so I've been hardening them off for about 5 to 6 days now, I would say. Probably a little bit more. There were a few nights when they stayed out here, but then the temps dropped far too low, so I took them back inside, and now they're back out here. So I'm keeping an eye on the weather. I actually just bought a weather app because the one I had before, the one that comes with my phone, just wasn't very accurate, and it was really frustrating because sometimes it seemed as though the weather was going to be a lot warmer than it actually was, or it was going to be a lot cooler, and it would constantly update. And now I have a new one that I think is going to work a lot better. This morning I also went ahead and filled up the rest of these grow bags, which looks like it's a lot of soil, and it kind of is, but recently I pruned the front yard and I took all of those leaves and clippings, and then I stuffed some of these grow bags with them. So these two right here have potatoes. Oh no, wait, this one does it. This one has potatoes. This one is empty. This one has potatoes. I should put tags on them. This one is empty. This one has a whole bunch of different watermelons in there. I know it might be a little bit too soon to bring those out here and to transplant them, but I'll probably cover this grow bag if I feel like it's getting too cold. The thing is that I typically don't like to start watermelons indoors before transplanting them out. I like direct sowing them because I feel like they take off a lot better rather than transplanting them. But I wanted to see if I could get a head start. Worst case, if it doesn't work out, I'll go ahead and direct sow a few more. And I only started about 1 to 2 of each variety just to see how they would do. This grow bag is empty. I think I might want to reserve one of these for some sweet potatoes. But then again, I'm not sure because I also want to fill them with a bunch of other stuff. This one right here has some pumpkins, and I know that there's a lot of plants in there. Some of them might not make it, but I was trying to recreate the whole healing process and plant a couple just in case the frost takes out a couple of these, because we haven't hit our last frost yet. And then these two have some potatoes that have already started popping through. So that definitely took a little while to complete because there were so many grow bags and I had to mix up the soil, but they're finally done. And whichever ones don't have plants in them yet are already ready to be transplanted into. And that's basically it. I only completed a few tasks, but each of those tasks was very time consuming, like mixing up soil, uppotting some really huge trees, and then filling up the grow bags. I still have a lot more to get done, but it's okay because there's always tomorrow.